Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first edition of Science Beyond the Sci-Fi. I'm your host, Tyler Yohe. I'm the writer and creator of the hard sci-fi used in the video game development for Broken Crown games. So I just want to start off, we'll kind of go from past to present and then to future. So with that said, Amy, since you are our space historian of the group, can you kind of tell us, one, how many landed missions there have been on other planetary bodies, both moons, planets, that kind of thing, and how many of them were manned versus unmanned?
We landed on the moon 6 times with manned missions, but there were a host of unmanned probes that land in advance of and since the Apollo missions of the 1960s and 70s. We've also, well, we didn't. We as humans did. The Soviet Union landed the Venera probes on Venus. We've landed, as most of us know, a ton of stuff on Mars. And we've also landed, well, we sort of landed on Jupiter, but Jupiter doesn't really have a surface to land on, so we shoved something into Jupiter. We've landed on Titan, of course, Saturn's moon Titan, and we've also landed on a couple of asteroids and comets. Eros and, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Itokawa, 2 asteroids, and Comet 9P sort of impacted that. So we've landed on 9 different bodies and done, again, I'm not sure the number of missions, but that's a whole lot of science and a whole lot of landing to have done on different bodies.
Could you tell us a little bit about the private space exploration that is starting to crop up for the first time, really becoming very prominent?
Sure. The Google Lunar X Prize is a great place to start. This is almost 8 years ago. A group got together and said, could we set up a technology incentive prize for the first private lander on the moon? And the whole point of this prize is to encourage and to incentivize private space exploration. Could a private entity actually land something on the moon?
I would say there's a very healthy space industry that exists more or less independent of government activity. And so the question is, going forward, how do we take some of the lessons that have been learned from all of that and transfer it into activities like asteroid mining or research in orbit, maybe it's biomedical research or something like that. And there have been some very promising leads on that front. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that develops.
As we move from present to future, is there any missions that, in your history of going out, doing a lot of writing in the space industry, are there any missions that you're kind of excited to see to come to fruition?
My favorite upcoming mission that launched, I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't, the Maven mission, NASA's Maven mission to Mars. I think it launched in November, and I think it's getting there next September. So this is a really weird one, and unfortunately there's no camera, so it's not going to be a big, popular excitement one. But it's testing the atmosphere to sort of reverse engineer and understand why Mars has lost its atmosphere and why it's sort of this dry, arid, cold planet that we see now. So I've met a handful of the science team, and one of them described it as, you have a pot of boiling water and you take a ladle and you ladle out a bunch of the steam, and based on what you can learn from the steam, you have to figure out how much water was in the pot before it started boiling. So that's what they're doing on Mars, and that's really cool.
Do you think we'll be at a peaceful world scenario before we colonize our first planetary body, whether it be our moon, Mars, or anything?
Before I really had a clue who Neil deGrasse Tyson was, I read an essay really that he wrote. He basically said there's 3 reasons why we do big things, and he talked about the Great Wall of China and the exploration with ships around the world where we found the Americas and so on, the pyramids, and he said it's basically religion, or war, or commerce. And these are the 3 reasons why we do enormous projects. He talks about the astronaut as almost like the high priest, if you will. That one person that gets to go to the holy place, and the thousands of people that made spaceflight happen as all of the believers that put in their time, their effort, their money, and lifted one person up so that we could all understand this higher truth. If you're a humanist and you say, what is it that we should be doing? What is it that we should be doing that really changes the world, that makes all of us better? Then you might say that the private spaceflight is not going to necessarily happen for commercial reasons in the short term, but maybe somewhere in this realm of commerce, some higher purpose can be served by doing exploration, and that we can come together around that.
In the narrative of the Broken Crown universe, there becomes a period called the Terror Boom era, where it's more or less just coming to the point where we can put colonies on other planets, whether it be not necessarily terraforming them, but doing biodomes or underground dwelling. So in the Terror Boom era, basically it's this golden age where we're not just on Mars or we're not just on the moon when we really start to hit that explosion point of colonizing other planetary bodies. But when do you guys feel that point would be, a Terror Boom era point?
More than 100 years. And part of the reason for that is the way research is being done right now. It tends to be very much focused on a particular setting or scenario. So, maybe someone's trying to, find a way to, both find and then extract water from the soil on the moon. There's research being done on that front. Same with Mars. How do you go to Mars, send something that will be able to generate oxygen or other things that you need? But it's very much focused on that one particular site. Someone either needs to come up with a really incredible biodome or multi-use technology, or you're going to have to keep on researching these things one at a time. And I think that's probably more likely just because of how the funding will work.
So that's all we really have time for. What I do want to do real quickly is, just in case some of our viewers, whether they're young kids or adults looking to possibly start getting involved more in the space industry, or just science industry in general, wanted to cover some ways that they could do that.
Poster child for how to do science without being a scientist, because I have no science background. But there are a lot of ways that you can get involved if it's just sort of doing, things on the publicity end of the sort of, animation and imaging end. There are ways that you can engage with things without having to be the one who's designing a mission or doing the actual hard science. So if you really, want to get involved in space in some way, just keep your eye out for those opportunities and the people who do it, and just, oh, do you need someone to write your newsletters? There's your in. So it's just sort of following your passion, finding a way to make it happen.
What would be your suggestion for getting involved from the educational side of things?
There are a lot of outlets. One that the X Prize Foundation promotes is called Moonbots, and I take a look at Moonbots online. You can form your own team and get into a challenge that is changes from year to year. Another one is called the Challenger Centers, and this is a space science center for kids that was founded after the Challenger shuttle disaster by the families of the Challenger astronauts, and they have quite a few centers now around the country. I don't know how many, but there might be one near you. Check it out, and always know, and this is for all the kids that are watching this, and for all the kids that you can talk to, that science and math is much more fun than it is hard.
So for any international viewers that we may have, is there any way you could tell us either suggested places or things that people could do from an international standpoint to start to get involved?
I would say there's a great deal of globalization going on, particularly in terms of engagement with the public. So there are space hackathons, there are space challenges. There's one that NASA supports called the International Space Apps Challenge. This year they had something like 8,000 or 9,000 participants from across the world. And the idea is that you come up with new ideas, new technologies, new applications. So maybe you have a great idea for how to combine satellite imagery with Twitter to figure out, during a disaster, when people are sending out their tweets, can you map that? Can you show where the flooding is? Can you combine these things to help the rescue effort? Well, that's just one example. So I would say if you have an idea, there's definitely a way to get it out there and promote it, and potentially bring it to someone who can implement that idea.
With that said, that pretty much wraps up everything for this panel. If you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up, help us spread the message. Other than that, you can check out more about our science fiction for the Broken Crown universe at www.brokencrowngames.com. And we are on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, all of that's on our website, so please check us out. Thanks a lot.
So long.
Thanks, Tyler.